The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews, episode number 522. That means it's the final one. Here we are. It's going to be a very different episode this week, but I've got some movies to talk about and some people to thank, and I'm really excited to get into this. So let's just get started with what we have on the marquee this week. I went to see the new film from director Luca Guadagnino. It is Challengers, starring Zendaya, Mike Faist, and Josh O'Connor. So Mike Faist plays Art Donaldson. Art Donaldson is a star tennis player who, as we meet him, is recovering from surgery, trying to get back to the top of his game. His wife, Tashi, herself a former rising star player, is his coach, pushing him to get back. Art suffers from a lack of confidence, and one of the ideas to get his confidence back is to enter him into a smaller event, something they call a challenger match. Ooh, there's the title. This is where we meet Patrick Zweig, who's played by Josh O'Connor. He's a struggling down on his luck player, sleeping in his van, someone for whom this little challenger event seems to mean a lot. But he doesn't shrink from the challenge of facing a former superstar in Art Donaldson. And as we spend the rest of the movie seeing why these men are where they're at through a sense of flashbacks, we go back 13 years to see them as teenagers, infatuated with this phenom, Tashi Duncan, that's Zendaya's character if you hadn't guessed, fighting awkwardly over her attention, competing on the court with each other and with each other over this girl. They're obsessed with her, and she uses that to take control of the situation, toying with them, ultimately choosing one. And each man has very different expectations from their time with her. Art is the nice guy who's the safe one, has a successful tennis career. He wears white on the court. And eventually, they get married, it's in the trailer, and they have a very professional marriage arrangement. Whereas Patrick is a wild card, more emotional, passionate. Not the success that Art is, he also wears black on the court. Oh, and we have it reiterated over and over and over in this movie that tennis is a relationship, and it's one that Tashi sees early on, and tennis is always going to be number one for her. She also sees that she has control over these puppy dogs and uses it in every situation. And so we watch over the years as the emotional toil for all of them builds up, and we cut back and forth through time to reveal secrets and lies and sources of pain and distrust and years of memories and just complicated relationships in this film. And as relationships are tested and friendships are torn apart, all over this one woman, and loyalties going back and forth like volleys over the net. And that's kind of one of the things that I started to kind of wear on me in this movie, is it felt like it was 20 minutes too long, and use a lot of that 20 minutes, especially in the final act, to build tension, but Guadagnino chose to use slow-mo to build tension with every moment. Let's do it in slow motion, see the droplets of sweat come off their face, and after a while it becomes really overwrought. And we also have, industrial music underneath in these tense situations, and it started to really drag out and kind of belaboredly got to this point that was telegraphed. Like 90 minutes into the film, there was a specific thing that was shown. And if you know anything about movies or storytelling, you know this is going to be brought back at the end. And it was, and you knew it was, but you had to wait through a lot of slow motion to get to that point. I also didn't care for the constant time jumping. Like every 10 minutes, we move in time again, and it really started to wear thin for me. Every time I felt myself getting invested in these characters, in their stories, in their relationships, we jump to a different point in the story. And unlike a film that I'll be talking about later on in this episode, which used this time jumping to great effect, this felt like it was used to kind of hide facts from you as an audience member in order to give some great reveal later on, but it got frustrating. I really enjoyed here's the thing, it sounds like I'm bagging on this movie. I actually loved every performance in this movie. The three main leads were all great. Zendaya, really, really terrific in this. She is the lady who can't be tamed. And at one point, one of the characters asked her, like, aren't you everybody's type? And she's like, yeah, that's right. And she's also credible as a tennis player, I thought. I found myself disliking almost everyone from this film because of the constant, like, man, because anytime infidelity and children and all this are used in a movie, it starts to make me feel kind of icky towards some of these people. And I was kind of really praying for Tashi to start losing control because she held control over everything. She had the advantage, to use a tennis term, in this movie. And I found myself becoming less and less enamored with the characters. But the film was incredible looking. Guadagnino is a great director. It looked great. The tennis looks pretty credible in the movie. It's shot really well. The message of unrealized dreams, I think, is a really interesting one. And I mean, if you're ever not sure what the movie's about, Zendaya, Tashi Duncan tells you in the movie, I'm always talking about tennis. If you're not sure, I'm always talking about tennis. My kind of big issue is Guadagnino, for all of his greatness as a filmmaker, he really lacks in subtlety in his storytelling, and he really wants to make sure you get what he's meaning. And he takes his time to hammer that point home. And I think it's a hamstring of his that he could fix, but he kind of does that in every movie. The performances are solid. I love Josh O'Connor as Patrick. He was true to who he was, never betrayed who he was from the beginning. And the end of message of this kind of won me over. And the beauty of it won me over, even if I didn't really like the people in this movie. And so I end up giving Challengers a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's a film that I think you should go check out. It's probably one of the better tennis movies I've ever seen. There's that. I mean, it's a low bar to clear, but it was a good tennis movie. Also, really quick, I also got to see The Fall Guy last night, and it was too late for me to get it officially into the show. And I just wanted to give you a quick thoughts on The Fall Guy movie, Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt. Full-throated recommend on this movie. I absolutely enjoyed it. Action from the first frame until the end of the credits. Just a beautiful homage to both the television show and to stunt performers in movies as a whole. It's funny. Ryan Gosling is hitting on all cylinders in this movie. Emily Blunt and he have great chemistry between them. And it's just a high recommend. The Fall Guy, I'm saying go see it. It's a ton of fun. It's in theaters. I mean, just coming out right now. I'm giving it high marks. Go check out The Fall Guy, especially if you love Ryan Gosling like I do. Let's dig into what we have for our movie throwback this week. I actually have 2 films that I want to talk about just because I have the chance to. It's just me. We're not doing anything after this, so I might as well talk about a couple movies I've always wanted to talk about on this program, kind of in a longer form. The first one is a film from 2005. It's called Brick, from director Rian Johnson. Stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Brendan. It's a modern detective noir set in a high school setting. The film opens with Brendan, his character, finding the body of his dead ex-girlfriend, Emily, in a storm drain. And this leads him back to a frantic and confusing phone call that he received from her 2 days earlier, and a set of circumstances that led this lovelorn man into digging deep into a world of drug trafficking, bad guys, and a damsel that he's not sure he can trust, and slowly finding out the truth behind who Emily was and how the inner workings of the high school drug and crime syndicate work. Along the way, he took some beatings and some betrayals, and it's a true noir film with Dashiell Hammett-style dialogue and a Sam Spade-type lead who just wants to get to the bottom of it. And I am a big lover. Like, detective noir dramas are my go-to genre. And this is a great resetting of that in a high school environment in 2000s. It doesn't sound like it should work, but it really does. It's a film that the first time I saw it, I rented it, and upon finishing it, immediately went out and bought the DVD. And it's a film that I've given many copies to other people to watch because I just feel like it's criminally underseen. And it made me a Joseph Gordon-Levitt fan. It made me a Rian Johnson fan, which has burned me subsequently. But I think it's a really smart film. It's got interesting characters that, on its surface, like I said, it shouldn't work setting this in high school. But it's honest in what it's trying to do. And I'm always along for the ride when a film is really being honest about what it's trying for, what it's shooting for. No cute tricks. It's one of my favorite films, honestly, Brick is. And I don't feel like enough people have seen this. And if you haven't, if you're hearing me talk about it for the first time, I highly recommend going out, checking it out. It's a great one. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. Another film that is one of my favorites, and I know we've talked about it in the past on the show, kind of mentioned it here and there, but I got to talk about it. 1994, Pulp Fiction came out. A film that blew my hair back the first time I saw it. You see the evidence of that right here. I'd never seen a non-linear narrative like this film. An incredible soundtrack with immaculate needle drops of the music in here. Characters that are so cool, saying intoxicating dialogue, these gangsters, these drug dealers and thieves, people living in the underworld all around us. John Travolta being resurrected from career death, basically. Travolta and Sam Jackson having that epic walk and talk as they're about to go visit Brett in the beginning of the movie. Like, what a crazy way to open a movie after the initial robbery scene in the diner. You get to see these two guys in suits talking about Royale with cheese and giving foot rubs, and there's like, what is going on here? And they're quoting scripture in a way that I'd never seen done before. Christopher Walken showing up in this movie, stealing 5 minutes with his flashback speech to young Butch about his father's watch. Everything this film, outside of Bruce Willis's love interest, Fabienne, who every time I rewatch this movie, I'm like, man, if we could just cut her out of this movie. But doesn't matter. This movie is perfect. It is one of the great movies of all time, much less of the 90s. It's a soundtrack that I loved because it was filled with dialogue from the movie in between songs. You could replay the movie in your head listening to the soundtrack and then the needle drop into the next wild song that half the time you feel like they shouldn't all work together in the same movie. They're all over the place. But Tarantino known for his love of odd musical choices in movies, and this is great. And it's a film that really lit a fire in me and my love of movies again in 1994. I'm 17 years old, in high school. Love movies, but this thing lit the fire in me. Goodfellas was my first quote-unquote adult film that made me interested in really digging into movies and specific actors and made me appreciate storytelling. But this, Goodfellas as well also helped me appreciate how music is used to tell a story. And then this movie, this became kind of my jam. And I'm sure, and it was for a lot of people of my age at this time. This really changed movies for a while and ushered in a lot of copycats that were much lesser versions of it. But Pulp hit me at the right point, had me rewatching it, listening to the soundtrack incessantly. And it's like The Giving Tree on rewatch. I rewatched this again recently in recent weeks just because I knew I was going to talk about it. Like, yeah, let me put it on. And like I say, it's The Giving Tree. There's always something you can get out of it. There's always some nuance or tying things into other movies that he does, right? It's a classic, and I absolutely love it. This movie got me digging deeper into movies than ever before, and that's never stopped. And I can kind of see, I can kind of point to this film as really launching me into my love of movies, wanting to know everything about it. It's also only a few years until the internet starts up, and you can really start to dig into movies and being on the sets of movies beforehand and all that. And that kind of really all started to snowball and got me where I'm at today of just like, that's all I think and talk about, for better or for worse. But I just wanted to give a throwback to both of those movies. And like I was saying with Challengers, how that movie does these time jumps back and forth. And I found it to be really annoying because I felt like it was being used to, confuse the audience. I never felt that way with Pulp Fiction. I felt like it was really smart in how they did it. And then you start seeing other movies copycat that. But great stuff. It's hard to believe. It's been 30 years since Pulp Fiction came out, which is pretty wild. And a lot of people spent a lot of hours talking and quoting movies with me since then, former roommates, coworkers, and it led to me hosting several film discussion podcasts starting back in 2011, and kind of where this love of film and documentaries and whatever led to me talking a lot of hours into a microphone about movies. And that's where former director here at the Media Center, Jeff Robbins, found me in 2014 and offered me this great chance to talk about movies weekly and talk about anything I wanted about movies, which was great. And I asked my friend Mike Roth, who was here last week, to join me in this, and away we went. And now 10 years later, I have a lot of people I want to thank. And so there's a lot of people here in the Media Center: Mara Trusty, Rachel Packard, Colin Lessig, Lisa Wolf, Margie Lake, all the production specialists over the years. My parents, my mom specifically, who is my biggest fan, watches. She's the first one to watch every week, and she calls me with her thoughts and feedback on this. But I have a video I kind of want to play here of all the various co-hosts I've had joining me over the years. Let's see if we can get that up on the screen. There it is. Wendy Rayborg, my first guest host early on, and also got to enjoy an incredible cake that we were given that week. You see that right there on the screen. She was awesome. Shane Moselle, who filled in for me when I was in North Dakota. I didn't actually have him here. He was brought in by Mike to be his guest and did a great job. He sat in the seat. Bill Baker also filled in for me while I was in Colorado a couple years ago, joined Jeff Robbins to review the films of the week, and got an appreciation for how much time goes into this effort. There he is, Jamie Ostrander. Oliver the Caretaker Collins joined me for a fun episode where he introduced me to the Phantasm franchise. Fun crossover with spine-chilling cinema. We had a little logo change around this time. And then we had Andy Shaner stop. He joined me for one episode. He hosts several programs here at Sun Prairie Media Center. Scott Bussey came on to discuss the films that week, including The Meanest Man in Texas, which was a film about a relative of his. That was a lot of fun, interesting time. Then we also had Jackson Nesbitt, young man, one of our production specialists here, a young man who I would chat movies with him during football games, and he came on a few times, and we had some really fun discussions with him. Really talented, really smart guy there, Jackson Nesbitt. And then Gershon Porter, a friend and coworker who I've spent nearly 20 years with at work, really breaking down films. He loves writing. He loves talking about the writing of shows, and I love having him on. We have heated conversations sometimes, but he is so much fun every time I have Gershon on. It's a shame we couldn't get him more. Zenit Schmitz, we just saw him here a few weeks ago. My pal from the Palace, who he himself is an aspiring filmmaker. I always enjoy talking movies with him, whether here or at the theater. This goofball. And then we also have, speaking of the Palace, we have Alice Heinzen, who, a.k.a. Alice from the Palace, the smilingest face you see when you walk in the door at the Palace. Look forward to seeing Alice when I go to a film, and I was overjoyed to have them on here with me over the past year or so. Alice always brings excitement. I'm always excited to have Alice here. And then, let's see, Alice was my 10th guest host on here. And then, oh, look at that, young Tears of Rabbit, my daughter, my movie buddy. My greatest joy was doing this show long enough to have her on to talk about movies. I mean, that made me overjoyed to have my daughter, who was a baby when I started this show 10 years ago. And man, that was a proud papa moment right there, looking at her. Speaking of proud papa moments, Logan Rabbit, my oldest son, a guy who produced this show for a couple of years. He was a production specialist here. I love talking movies with him so much. So incredibly proud to have him on here and have some really, he's really articulate in what he loves and does not love in movies. And he joined me on this show a half dozen or so times. And like I said, also was helped direct this show for a number of years. My next guest was Jason Spencer. There he is. The one and only time he was here in the studio, most often he was remote from his van or somewhere else. Old friend who I met while our wives were stationed in Germany together. No one has talked movies with me more than Jason Spencer. I love that guy. We have spent so many hours on podcasts, in real life, at work, across the globe, talking movies. And it's always been a real treat, a real pleasure to have him on. We just were able to have him on a few weeks ago. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that was during the pandemic when we were all in separate places. A lot of fun. Loved having Jason on. My next guest that I had on was someone who I was told by one of our people here. It's Kate Sadler. I was told over and over by someone I trust that I had to get Kate on this show. And no one brought more energy to this show than Kate Sadler. She cracks me up every time she's on. She knows her stuff. She's here to have fun. She's here to talk movies. And I'm also a little jealous of Kate's hair because it's just the best. But Sarah Molesky, one of our volunteers here, was the one who told me you have to have Kate on. You have to have Kate on. And I'm so glad that she insisted on that because Kate was a great joy to have on. Another one of my guests I had on was my 15th guest of the show, Tom Reichelt, the area general manager for Marcus Theaters, the boss at the Palace, who's welcomed us in so many times to do remote shows. He's been so good to us over the years, and I loved getting to have him on. I especially loved when he'd come on and he would bust my co-host chops. There was one time he was, we were at the Palace, and it was Jeff Robbins, myself, and him, and he was busting Jeff's chops about his review of a specific movie, and he's just been such a blessing to us over the years. Really appreciate Tom. Man, he's been great to this program over the entire run of this show, and he makes the Palace a wonderful place. There's Michael Selesky, another coworker and friend who wrote up such eloquent intros for the films that always seemed to end with a pun. He was so easy to work with, would say yes anytime I asked him to come on and do the show. Spent a lot of time getting me straightened out on the lore of the Dune franchise leading up to the first film, because if you ever need anyone to explain what Dune is, my man's got the time to talk about it. And I always really enjoyed Michael Selesky when he came on here. Really fun guy, really knowledgeable guy. There he is, Jeff Robbins, the former director here, a frequent collaborator with me on this program and numerous other radio shows. He's the man who is responsible for this show being a thing. I swore it was his mission when he came on to derail me at some point in each episode, and he was pretty good. Look at that face. That's a guy who likes to derail things. But man, did I have a lot of fun with him. It was great. He filled in for me when I couldn't be here. He took the lead of the show a couple of times, which was great. And he got to meet Santa Claus in the process. So come on, that's a good time. Who else do we have? Oh, speaking of the media center, there she is, Mara Trusty, the person behind the look and the whole production of the show. I was so overjoyed to finally get Mara in front of the camera before this show came to an end. She's had to put up with thousands of emails from me and has always made this show the best it could be. And oh man, I just love that Mara and I got to do this show together for so long. Another face that just got to see recently, Dan Presser. Look at that guy. A pro's pro. Every time I got done with a Dan Presser episode, I would say, damn, he makes this just look so easy. And it's a good time at the office when Dan is here. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better newsman to sit with and just make it look easy. Speaking of making things look easy, Sarah Rabbit, my beautiful and talented wife, who's a massive movie fan on her own. She was on several times, never enough. I am her biggest fan, though. Sarah Rabbit is the greatest. And then lastly, Steve Sabaki. What can I say? My most frequent co-host over the past 3 years. I love talking movies with Steve wherever we are. I love guessing what he thinks of a film. He's the most self-deprecating person I know, and my favorite thing to do is try to get him to laugh. There we go. Got it. Man, Steve was great. Yeah, thank you. That's 21 people who came in, whether they were with me or with somebody else filling in on the show. But there's one man who sat next to me for over 350 shows. I thought about rolling this last week when he was here, but let's give him his special moment. Let's roll the next video because, of course, the 22nd, the first guest, but there he is. Let's put it full screen. Mike Roth. I mean, he's just the best. There were so many people that I wasn't able to get on with me, to kind of talk over this. Look at this stuff. I could have had so many more people who would have joined me for the show, and I apologize to those who I tried to get on and we couldn't get on. But look at Mike. We won awards together. Look at that. That's beautiful, huh? And he just made it fun. We talked about it last week when he was back for it, and we saw the change from Eastgate Cinema to the Palace in the meantime. We've had many a cake together, some beautiful cakes together. We've seen a lot, through the years of this show. It's kind of interesting how much has changed. Oh, we made the paper, huh? That's big time stuff right there. Had some balloons, we dressed up. 370 some episodes, he got to meet Billy D. Williams and tell him that he was a big fan of Billy D. Williams. We've got to do live shoots together from the theater, various locations in the theater. That was a lot of fun. There we were sitting in the lobby. Just fun. We had to make sure to be careful. That was during the pandemic. We had to separate ourselves. Even still, Mike's laugh carried. Didn't matter how far you sit from Mike, you're going to hear his laugh. That should be patented. That was a Halloween where we dressed as each other for some reason. Many a Halloween together. The costumes didn't always make sense, but they were always a good time. A lot of them were thrown together at the last possible second. That one was not. But look at that, the unicorn and a unicorn wrangler. If you're, and then, an X-Wing guy and a hippie. A lot of fun. Had some Christmas times together. Mike got to show off his gams. Man, that guy, look at them legs, huh? Yeah, and then it's a gun show with him and Santa hanging out. I just think it's fun that we, then the pandemic hit, and we managed to continue going through the pandemic from home, figuring out Zoom like everyone else, and never missed a week of the show through it all. Then we come together. We got to be socially distanced, though, of course, yelling over to him. We talked about the Oscars. We talked about movies we loved. We talked about movies we hated over the years. We got thinner, we got fatter, we got more hair, we got less hair. One of us got really gray. But we got to do the Siskel and Ebert shoot. And there he is. Thanks, Mike. That guy's the best. And there we go. And I just wanted to highlight, as I have been, how much I appreciate everyone who's done this show with me. And I hope that, we've helped you decide what to watch or what to avoid. And I hope that I've been able to be a trusted voice for you, and that we've helped someone in some way in how they view movies. When we started here, there were only 8 Marvel movies out at that point. The Guardians of the Galaxy weren't even a thing yet. Obama was in office. Star Wars hadn't had any sequel films yet. Force Awakens comes out the following year. We've seen this industry change in massive ways over the time that we've been doing this show. And people keep asking me what I'll be doing after this, and that's a great question. I'm going to keep watching films. I know that. There's a ton of films coming out this year that I'm very excited for. Every time I see the trailer for Maxine or Furiosa or Joker or Bike Riders, I'm still super excited. So you're still going to see me at the theater. I got to find a way this is the first time, this week next week is the first time in so many years that I don't have an outlet for my thoughts on pop culture and movies. And it's going to be interesting for me. It's exciting. I would say I encourage you to continue following Real Reviews on social media, where I'll be doing some videos. I'll be doing some written reviews. Who knows? I'm not going anywhere. I'm not stopping watching movies. Who knows what the future holds? But I appreciate everyone who tuned into this show, who reached out to me to let me know their thoughts, good, bad, or otherwise. I just loved hearing from people. And I just hope that we could impart some entertainment, maybe a little wisdom, and some fun over the last 522 weeks. I'm going to miss you guys as viewers. I'm going to miss the people here. It's been great. It's been a good run. So until we see each other again, wherever that may be, take care of yourself. Thank you for all the good times, and enjoy the movies. Bye, everyone.